Millions of people are struggling in 2026, but you do not always see it on the surface. On social media, everything looks normal, restaurants are still open, airports are still busy, and the headlines do not always scream crisis. Yet behind closed doors, across the United States and many other developed countries, a quiet financial pressure is building inside ordinary households. It is not dramatic enough to dominate every news cycle, but it is real enough that millions of families feel it every single day. The struggle today does not always look like unemployment lines or total collapse. It looks like credit card balances quietly rising. It looks like parents skipping small pleasures to keep up with rent. It looks like young professionals earning decent salaries but still feeling stuck. One of the biggest reasons is the cost of living. Even though inflation has slowed compared to the peak years, prices remain significantly higher than they were just a few years ago. Groceries, utilities, insurance, healthcare, and especially housing have all become heavier monthly burdens. When prices rise quickly, they rarely fall back down in a meaningful way. That means households must permanently adjust to a higher baseline of expenses. Now add interest rates to the picture. When the Federal Reserve raised interest rates to fight inflation, it made borrowing more expensive across the board. Mortgages became harder to afford, car payments increased, and credit card interest rates reached levels many consumers had never experienced before. For families carrying debt, even a small increase in rates can translate into hundreds of extra dollars per month. That alone pushes many budgets from tight but manageable into constantly stressful. Another hidden layer of this struggle is wage growth that has not fully kept pace with real expenses for many workers. While some sectors have seen raises, others have not kept up with rising housing and service costs. In practical terms, people may technically be earning more than they did 3 or 4 years ago, but their purchasing power feels weaker. This creates frustration because the effort is still there. People are working hard, sometimes multiple jobs, but the sense of financial progress feels slower than expected. Housing is perhaps the most visible pressure point. In many areas, home prices remain high while mortgage rates are elevated compared to the ultra-low levels of the early 2020s. Renters are also facing higher monthly payments, and moving to a cheaper place is not always easy because prices have risen broadly. Younger generations in particular are feeling this shift. Buying a first home now requires a larger down payment, higher monthly income, and stronger credit than it did for previous generations. That makes the traditional milestones of adulthood feel delayed. There is also a psychological side to this economic pressure. Constant exposure to curated lifestyles online can make ordinary financial challenges feel like personal failures instead of structural realities. When someone sees others traveling, upgrading homes, or launching businesses, it can create the illusion that everyone else is thriving. In truth, many of those same people may also be managing debt, stretching budgets, or relying on credit to maintain appearances. Another factor quietly shaping 2026 is technological disruption. Artificial intelligence and automation are increasing productivity in many industries, but they are also reshaping job markets. Some roles are evolving rapidly, others are shrinking, and workers are being forced to adapt faster than before. Even when layoffs are not widespread, the uncertainty about long-term career stability can make people cautious. When households feel unsure about the future, they tend to save more if possible and reduce discretionary spending. That shift in behavior can slow parts of the economy, even if overall employment numbers look stable. It is important to be honest, this is not a complete economic collapse. Many sectors are strong, businesses are innovating, and entrepreneurship is still alive, but the reality is uneven. Certain income groups are thriving while others are squeezed. Asset owners who bought homes or investments years ago often have a financial cushion. Those who entered the market later face higher costs and heavier risks. This growing gap contributes to the feeling that something is off, even if official statistics do not signal a full crisis. So what is really happening? In simple terms, millions of people are adjusting to a new economic normal that is more expensive, more competitive, and less forgiving than before. The era of extremely cheap borrowing is over for now. Global supply chains have stabilized compared to pandemic years, but geopolitical tensions and structural changes still influence prices. Demographic shifts, including an aging population and lower birth rates in many developed nations, also play a role in long-term economic dynamics. All of these forces combine into a slow, quiet squeeze rather than a dramatic shock. The reason it feels like no one is talking about it is because it does not fit into a single headline. There is not one event to point at. It is a series of gradual changes happening simultaneously: higher baseline prices, elevated interest rates, shifting job security, and altered expectations about wealth and stability. And yet, understanding this shift is powerful. When people recognize that their financial stress is not purely personal failure, but part of a broader transition, it changes the narrative. It becomes less about panic and more about strategy. Budgeting becomes more intentional. Skills development becomes more urgent. Long-term planning becomes more realistic. The truth is that 2026 represents a period of economic recalibration. Millions are struggling, yes, but they are also adapting. And throughout history, periods of adjustment often create new opportunities for those who stay informed, flexible, and proactive. The struggle is real, but it is not invisible once you know where to look.